They say a home is safest when the gate is shut and the lamps are bright. But I learned that danger can wear clean clothes and smile with soft eyes. Before I tell you what happened in Madame Kemby's compound, hold your breath with me and listen, because one warning, heard on time, can save a life. If you're watching this video, please like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching my folktale story from. I want to know how far it has traveled. The red clay of Nakwa holds heat like a memory. That morning, I stood by Madame Kemby's gate and watched the mist lift from the path. Traders were already singing. Drums thumped like slow hearts. Then she arrived from the market with a thin girl at her side. The girl's name was Obianuju, brought from the far river villages near Omambala. Her eyes were bright and careful, like a wild cat that has not decided to trust. Madame Kemby was wealthy, but she was known for a soft hand. She spoke to the girl in a gentle voice and opened the gate herself. I heard the bell on the lintel ring once. It felt like a sign. Inside the wide yard, a breadfruit tree spread shade over the red soil, and a gray parrot, Anwa, watched from a thick branch. People stopped to stare. Some smiled at the new girl. Some looked away. I am the voice that tells what happened in that house. I saw how kindness can dress a wound, and how envy can sharpen like a knife. I saw how one warning can save a life. This is not a tale to entertain alone. It is a road sign in the dark. If you have a home, or plan to build one, listen with your whole heart. What I saw has kept me awake many nights, and I do not want you to learn it the hard way. Madame Kemby did not treat Obianuju like a tool. She led her to the washing area and poured warm water from a clay pot. The water smelled of palm oil and leaves. She washed the girl's hair and arms as a mother would, then rubbed her skin with shea. After that, she opened a trunk near the wall and brought out clean wrappers. The patterns were simple marks that some call nsibidi. They looked like small paths crossing and meeting again. She tied one wrapper around the girl and gave her a blouse. Then she placed tiny copper bells on the girl's ankle. So we will hear you when you come, she said with a smile. From the kitchen, the scent of Uzaiza soup drifted out, rich and warm. Obianuju tried to hide a smile, but I saw the joy touch her face and then hide again. Two other servants watched from the doorway. Our madam is too kind, one whispered. A house girl with fine cloth? The other shrugged. Kindness brings blessing, she said, but her voice was unsure. High above, the parrot, Anwa, clicked its beak. Its eyes were old and bright. It turned its head to follow the girl as she crossed the yard. Even the bird seemed to be learning a new name, tasting it like a fresh kola nut, rolling it on its tongue, Uju. In the afternoon, the sun fell in soft squares through the leaves. Nkembi gave Obianuju a small task: sweep the yard, fetch water from the earthen pot, and keep the cooking fire gentle. Simple work, not heavy. The girl moved lightly, her ankle bell making a soft sound like distant rain. When she passed under the breadfruit tree, Anwa lowered its head and made a rough croak. It did not sound friendly or angry. It sounded curious, as if it were counting the girl's steps. Obianuju paused and looked up. The parrot's eyes were like old coins, watching everything. She gave a tight smile and moved on. Before sunset, visitors came. Suitors often stopped by the gate to greet Madame Kemby. She was a widow with a rich trade in oil and cloth. They brought palm wine, new shoes, and sweet words. I saw Obianuju watching them from the water point. She stood still too long. Her eyes followed the coral necklace on Kemby's neck. Her hand pressed the wrapper at her own waist. When night came, the air cooled. The bell on the ankle was quiet at last. But in that quiet, a seed fell into the soil of someone's heart. It was small and easy to miss. Yet I felt the ground take it in. The moon watched quietly above the trees. Night spread over the compound like a blue cloth. Lanterns burned near the kitchen, and the fire cracked softly. Madame Kemby sat on a low stool, and Obianuju knelt behind her with a calabash of oil. The girl oiled her mistress's hair, gentle and careful, pulling the comb through each tangle. Copper bangles clicked at Nkemdi's wrist. When she stood to fetch water, the lid of her wooden chest was open. Inside the chest, coral beads lay in coils, shining like fire under water. Ivory combs lay beside them, smooth as moonlight. Obianuju's eyes did not blink. Her breath slowed. For a moment, the sound of the night frogs faded. It was only the chest and the glow and the long, slow beat of a wish. She reached out, then pulled back. The parrot shifted on the branch, feathers rustling like dry leaves. Obianuju forced a smile when Nkemdi returned. "Your hair is finished," she said in a small voice. Nkemdi thanked her and closed the chest. The metal clasp clicked. That click broke the moment, but the moment did not die. It hid and waited. I tell you the truth, some doors close with a sound that keeps ringing in the mind. That night, the ring did not stop. It grew into a hunger with sharp teeth. Even the insects fell silent for a breath. After the evening meal, children from the street came into the yard. They loved to sit by Madame Nkemdi's feet and hear stories. She told them simple things that carry big weight. "Kindness feeds a house," she said. "If you pour water for others, your own cup will not be dry." The fire popped. The flames threw gold light on the clay walls and on the faces that leaned close. Obianuju sat a little apart, hands in her lap. She smiled when others smiled, but her fingers drew half moons in her palm. When the children laughed, her eyes went to the chest as if it called her name. Anwa cocked its head and watched her. I saw the girl swallow hard when Nkemdi told how greed can dress like mead and still be greed. When the story ended, the children clapped. They left with the small, dancing steps of happy feet. Nkemdi stood and stretched. "Sleep well," she said to the girl. Obianuju rose and bowed her head. The yard grew quiet. A night breeze moved the raffia mat on the doorway. Somewhere a dog barked twice and stopped. I lay awake on my mat, listening to the bell at the gate and the rustle of leaves. Peace sat on the house like a bird. But not every bird is a friend, and not every quiet is safe. Ori market wakes like a drum. The traders spread mats, and the air fills with pepper, fish, and soap. That day, as the sun climbed, the talk was not about price. It was about the new girl in Madame Nkemdi's compound. A fishmonger swore she saw a silver shine at the girl's neck when she bent to lift a water pot. "River mark," she whispered. "Some children from Omambala carry water spirits in their blood." A basket seller clicked her tongue. "Do not spoil a child with fear," she said. "Let the girl work and eat." I watched the talk travel from stall to stall. Words can be like dry grass. One spark, and the whole field is hot. When Nkemdi came to buy palm kernels, the women lowered their voices. But eyes still followed her. Someone muttered, "Kindness is good, but kindness must keep its eyes open." Back at the compound, Anwa shook its feathers and gave a harsh hiss. Obianuju washed cooking pots in a careful rhythm, as if music could cover a thought. When she stood to rinse her hands, that quick silver glint showed again near the hollow of her throat, then vanished like a fish in muddy water. Nkemdi noticed the stares later and raised her chin. "Do not speak curses over my house," she told the women at the gate. "My door takes in peace, not rumors." The bell above the lintel answered with a single bright ring. Rain threatened, but the air held. Evening work began. Obianuju laid kindling in the hearth and touched a coal to it. The wood hissed and died. She tried again. Another hiss, then smoke, then nothing. A sour smell rose from the ash, like old fear. She frowned, blew gently, and shielded the flame with her hand. Still, the light refused to live. The room felt colder than it should. Madame Nkemdi stepped in, lifted a small calabash, and shook salt into her palm. She sprinkled the salt around the edge of the hearth and crossed the center with her finger, once, twice. The coal brightened. The flame woke at once, soft and steady, as if it had only been sleeping and now remembered its duty. The pot began to hum. Obianuju's face was smooth, but her eyes were loud. She looked into the flame too long, like a person reading a message. Anwa shifted on the lattice and made a low sound that was not quite a word. The girl placed the pot carefully and stepped back, hands tight at her sides. Some fires test our hands, Nkemdi said, half to herself, half to the girl. When they resist, we do not fight. We feed them gently. She left the room. The flame licked the pot in a slow dance. Obianuju watched it like an enemy that had won. Outside, thunder rolled far away, then held its tongue. Kindness can be a doorway. That night, after the meal, Nkemdi brought a small cloth pouch from her chest. She drew out a narrow coral thread, not rich, but real. You have worked well, she told the girl. Wear this and remember that this house values clean hands. Obianuju lowered her head. The thread flashed on her wrist, a soft red line against brown skin. For a breath, her smile reached her eyes. Then it slipped away. A wind passed through the courtyard and carried a shred of shadow across the ground. It moved oddly, as if it did not belong to any body. Anwa puffed up and gave a short growl that surprised even me. The parrot rarely growled. It watched the coral gleam like a guard watching a door. Later, when the others slept, I saw Obianuju stand in the moonlight and turn her wrist back and forth. The coral caught the pale light and threw it into her face. Her lips moved, but no sound came. She hid the thread under her sleeve, then pulled it out again, as if she could not decide whether she had been honored or bound. In the sleeping room, the chest rested under its cloth. Wood. Brass. Quiet. Yet the mind can hear things wood never says. The coral on her wrist felt like a promise. It also felt like a taste. Both are dangerous when the heart is hungry. Morning is when truth speaks, if you listen. At the village well, an old water drawer, Mama Oyai, squinted at Obianuju. Whose child are you? She asked. It was a simple question, the kind no one fears unless there is something to fear. The girl blinked. Neka, she said quickly. My mother is Neka. Mama Oyai frowned. Neka who? From which compound? The girl's mouth opened and closed once, like a fish at the surface. From the riverside, she said at last. The old woman rolled the rope slowly around the jar's neck. Water runs straight to the river, she murmured, but lies take bends. She passed the jar. Obianuju held it too tight. A thin line of water spilled and darkened the red earth. The copper ankle bell chimed once, small and sharp. Back at the house, the girl moved with extra care, as if neat work could sew up a small tear. She sang under her breath, a river tune with no words. When a trader at the gate asked her place again, she repeated the same name in the same quick tone. It was a neat answer, folded small, used twice. I stood by the breadfruit and felt the day tilt. Names matter in our land. A name is a door that opens to a family, to a story, to a grave where someone will join you later. When a name is smoke, something in the house will cough. At dusk, the birds argued in the trees and then fell quiet. Shadows were long and soft. Obianuju waited until footsteps faded and the gate bell stopped moving. She slipped behind the compound to the old grove where the soil smells rich and the ground is always a little damp. There, she knelt and brushed away leaves. Her hands were steady. She dug with a flat stick, deeper, then deeper still, until the earth showed a pale root like a finger bone. The elders call it Nkpuruanyinyo, the shadow seed. It is a plant with a milk-white heart. A dusting of it can quiet a goat forever. Mixed well into warm yam, it leaves no trace a simple I can see. The girl lifted it with care, wiped it clean on a green leaf, and wrapped it tight. She did not rush. She looked around once, twice, then rose and covered the hole neatly with her heel. Back at the kitchen wall, she stashed the bundle in a crack behind the lattice, where the clay is cool all night. Her breath came slow. The moon slid out from a cloud and lit her face. For a heartbeat, she looked like a stranger wearing a mask of the girl we knew. Above, Anwa turned its head toward the grove and listened to a silence most people never hear. The parrot's claws tightened on the wood. In the dark beyond the wall, a small lizard ran, stopped, and ran again. Some roads look straight. They are not. Midnight is when a house tells its secrets. The moon slipped across the roof, and the yard lay still as held breath. From the kitchen lattice, a sound began, soft, steady, patient, pestle to mortar, wood to clay. Thud, turn, thud. I rose on my mat and listened. Anwa, high on the breadfruit tree, lifted one foot, then the other. The parrot knew the night's normal sounds. This was not one of them. Obianuju's shadow moved on the kitchen wall. She worked by a tiny lamp, face low, elbows tight. In the mortar lay the pale root from the grove, ground to a powder as fine as ash. She folded yam flour into it, small and careful, the way a person hides a knife in cloth. The lamp made a trembling ring of light around her hands. Once she paused and looked toward the room where Madame Kemby slept. Then she set her mouth and kept grinding. The pestle rose and fell, like a heart that has chosen a path and refuses to be turned. Anwa crept along the branch, claws tapping bark. The bird's eye shone like a bead. When the mix was smooth, the girl wrapped it in a leaf and tied it with a strip of fiber. She hid it high on the inner shelf, where smoke stains the clay black. The lamp went out. The sound stopped. Night swallowed the kitchen again, but the night did not taste the same. Dawn washed the courtyard in thin gold. Roosters called. The well rope creaked. Smoke rose in a slow twist from the kitchen, clean and sweet. I saw Obianuju at the hearth, sleeves tied back. Her face was calm, almost bright. She stirred the yam porridge with a wooden spoon and dropped in a knob of palm oil that swirled like sunrise. From the doorway, Madame Kemby smiled, sleepy. "Ah, good child," she said. "You woke before me." The parrot hopped along the lattice, head low. It watched the pot as if the pot could speak. Obianuju ladled porridge into a carved bowl, sprinkled a touch of salt, and wiped the rim with a cloth. Her hands were steady. She carried the bowl to the mat where Nkembi sat cross-legged. The ankle bell made one soft note and then was quiet. "Eat while it steams," the girl said, voice soft as cloth. Nkembi thanked her and lifted the spoon. A light breeze moved across the yard and pressed the smoke flat. Somewhere, a lizard knocked on dry wood and ran. Small things, small signs. Many people do not hear them. I heard them and wished they were only wind. Obianuju stepped back into the shade, folding her fingers together. The chest in the inner room sat closed, but it seemed to breathe. The coral thread on the girl's wrist flashed once, then hid. Anwa's feathers rose the way dust rises before rain. The spoon hung halfway to the lips that trusted. There are moments when the world leans forward. This was one. The spoon hovered. Heat lifted from the bowl in a sweet cloud. Then the parrot broke the air. "Uju! Uju! Uju!" Anwa screamed from the breadfruit tree, voice sharp enough to cut rope. The name struck the walls and came back. Dogs barked. A baby cried in the next compound. The spoon paused in midair. Obianuju froze. For a heartbeat, her face was a mask with no eyes. Again the parrot shrieked, words tumbling like stones down a hill. "Uju! Ani agwu! Uju! Poisoner!" It beat its wings so hard the leaves shook. The ankle bell at the girl's foot trembled with a small, guilty chime. Nkemdi's eyes flicked to the bird, then to the girl standing in the shadow. In that thin slice of time, 1,000 paths opened. A person could laugh and eat. A person could question. A person could trust a bird that had spoken truth before. I saw memory cross Nkemdi's face, the night the fire would not start, the silver at the girl's throat, the old woman's bent question at the well. Her hand lowered a finger width. The steam curled, waiting. Obianuju's lips parted without sound. The parrot's last cry fell like a palm nut, "You, Jew." Then the yard went so quiet I could hear the beating in my own ears. The next breath would choose which story the village would tell for years. Choice is sometimes a mask. Madame Kembe chose quickly, but she did not shout. She touched the spoon to her tongue as if tasting heat, then let her eyes blur and her body slacken. The bowl slipped, thumped the mat, and rolled. She fell to her side with a heavy sigh and made no sound after that. It was a careful fall, the kind a strong person learns from fainting goats and long stories. For a heartbeat nothing moved. Then Obianuju rushed forward, hands fluttering near the woman's shoulder. "Madam? Madam," she whispered, shaking her gently, then harder. No answer came. The parrot watched, silent now, beak closed like a sealed mouth. The girl leaned close to the lips, to the chest, listening for breath. When she heard only the world's breath, the wind, the far drum, her shoulders eased. Her eyes tilted toward the inner room, where the wooden chest slept under its cloth. A slow smile built on her face, first thin, then full, like a moon waking from cloud. She stood, smoothed her wrapper, and glanced once around the yard. The servants had gone to the well. The street outside was quiet. She bent to lift the fallen bowl, set it upright, and stepped over the figure on the mat as if over a log on a path. In the doorway she paused, listening. The house answered with the soft hum of a place that thinks it is empty. In the sleeping room, air held the night's cool like a secret. Light fell in a square on the floor. Obianuju pulled the cloth from the chest and set it aside with careful hands. The brass clasp clicked open. Inside, the coral waited in soft loops, rich as ripe fruit. Cowries filled a gourd. Ivory combs lay smooth and pale, their teeth catching the light. She breathed in once, long and deep, as if scent alone could feed a hunger. Then she moved fast. Coral strings went under her wrapper, crossing her ribs. Cowries poured into a hidden pocket she had stitched days ago. The ivory comb she wrapped in a scarf and tied against her waist. Each piece made a small sound, a tap, a hush, and then disappeared. At her ankle, the bell would betray her. She knelt and bound it with cloth until it made only a dull kiss of metal. She looked around for prints she might be leaving in dust and smoothed the floor with her palm. The room said nothing. The chest stood open, as if it too were surprised. She returned to the doorway and peered into the yard. Nkemdi's body lay as before, still as abandoned water. The parrot had vanished from the branch, the air felt thinner without it. Obianuju drew her wrapper close and slipped toward the gate, feet careful, breath measured, mind already walking the river path out of Nakwa. The yard seemed empty, but a warning was already flying. Anwa burst from the breadfruit tree in a rush of gray, wings beating the hot morning like drums. The parrot cut across rooftops, past the grinding stone and palm press, screaming one name the way a town crier beats a gong. Uju. 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 People looked up from cassava, from cloth, from sleep. Children pointed. A drummer caught the alarm and answered with a rattle on the Ojin bell. At the gate, the girl loosened the bar and slipped into the road. Cloth around her ankle muted the bell, but her eyes rang with a hard light. She kept to the edge where dust holds footprints loosely. I followed, my heart hammering. I knew the bends of that road. I knew where one person could vanish into scrub and be gone by noon. Overhead, the parrot streaked toward the square, circling. Poisoner, it cried in our tongue. Thief. It swooped so low a basket seller ducked. Who? Someone shouted. Obianuju. The bird roared, and the name shot along the market like fire through dry raffia. Men near the wrestling ground dropped gourds. 3 cousins from the hunters' line snatched raffia whips by the drum hut and ran. I saw their shapes flash between trees. Dust leapt behind their heels. The road ahead narrowed where breadfruit roots lift the ground. The girl did not slow. She thought speed alone could carry her into the river's long arms. She reached the Omambala bend where the path dips and thick bush leans over the track. 3 young men stood across it, feet planted wide, raffia whips looped in their hands. They were sons of hunters and cousins to one another, Udo, Somadina, and Chike. I knew them by the way they watched the grass, like men who read ground the way others read books. "Stop there," Udo called. Obianuju slid to a halt, chest rising fast. The cloth under her wrapper bulged where Coral hid. For a heartbeat she tried a smile. "Brothers, my madam is ill. I go for a healer." Somadina shook his head once. "Your healer rides on your waist." He pointed to the scarf knot. Chike moved left to close the bush gap. The parrot wheeled above, circling and crying her name. Far behind, the Ojin bell rang 3 times from the square. The girl's face hardened. She turned as if to run back, then cut right, hoping to break through the scrub. Chike stepped in, swift as a fishing spear, and caught her wrist. She twisted and slipped like a wet fish. The scarf tore. Coral strings spilled, bright as cut fruit, bouncing in the dust. For a breath, everyone stared, the girl, the men, even I, who had feared this but still felt the shock. Then Udo's whip cracked the air. "Enough," he said. "You will walk back to the gate." The river kept its voice, but her road ended there. By high sun the heat lay heavy on our backs. The 3 men tied a short plait of raffia around Obianuju's wrists, not cruel, but firm. She kicked once, twice. Dust jumped. "I am innocent," she cried, but the stolen coral on the ground answered louder than words. Chike gathered the beads with careful fingers and tucked them into a gourd. "These go back," he said. Anwa spiraled above us like a gray wheel. Each time the parrot dipped, it shouted her name. Market women left their stalls and fell in behind us, whispering. Children trotted, curious. At the edge of the square, the talking drum spoke a short call that means, "Come. See. Judge." The message reached compounds faster than feet. Near the gate, Mama Oyai stepped forward and looked into the girl's eyes. "I asked you your mother's name," she said. "Now the ground asks it." Obianuju dropped her gaze. The bell on her ankle, half muffled, gave one small, shameful ring. We crossed the yard where the morning had started. Madame Nkembi still lay on the mat, eyes closed, body quiet as a pot. Gasps rose, hands flew to mouths. The youths halted and looked to me. I knelt beside the woman, touched her wrist, and felt the strong, secret beat that told me our path was not ending in mourning. "Call the elders," I said. Under the Irako, now. Rafters creaked as if they, too, exhaled. The parrot settled on the gong stand and kept watch. Shade from the palms cooled the yard. When the noise swelled and then hushed, Madame Nkembi's eyelids fluttered. She drew a slow breath, sat up, and wiped the charcoal from her tongue with the corner of her wrapper. A ripple of shock passed through the crowd. Some crossed themselves, others whispered a blessing. I took her arm and helped her to the stool by the breadfruit. Her gaze moved once around the yard, resting a heartbeat on each face. It stopped on the gourd of coral, on the raffia binding, and finally on the kitchen where the porridge still sat, skin forming. She nodded, as if a picture in her mind had fully developed. "I heard the bird," she said. "I tasted the warning." Obianuju's shoulders slumped. The fight went from her like water from a broken calabash. She sat on the ground and stared at her hands. The copper bell at her ankle looked very small. "Send for the elders," Nkembi told me, voice steady. "Let judgment have witnesses." I sent a boy running to the Irako with the bell phrase that calls a meeting. Anwa hopped down to the gong stand and lifted its head high, like a guard ready to name what it had seen. Neighbors crowded the gate. The sun slid behind a cloud, gentling the heat. We set a mat for the accused and a stool for the parrot's perch. Justice walks on 2 feet here, but it listens with more than ears. Under the Irako tree, shade hung like a roof. The elders came one by one, staffs tapping earth. Their wrappers were clean, their faces lined with years of sun and rain. The Ojin bell rang 3 times and then was still. People formed a wide circle, leaving the center open like a calabash waiting to be filled. We guided Obianuju to a low mat and loosened the raffia from her wrists. She did not run. Where would she go? The eldest man, Okonkwo the palm weaver, spoke first. We do not rush a river, he said. We let it clear, then we drink. He looked to Madame Kemdi. She stood without shaking. Food was offered to me, she said. A bird that has never lied cried out. I fell as if dead to test what would follow. Coral from my chest was taken. My house asks for truth. Murmurs moved like wind in dry grass. Someone brought the wooden bowl of porridge and set it at the Irako's roots. Anwa fluttered to the gong frame, feathers sleek, eyes bright as new coins. Children pressed forward until their mothers pulled them back by the shoulders. Let proof speak, Okonkwo said. Let the small mouths of the earth answer first. We all knew the old way. Before men argue, ants and time tell what they know. I knelt to clear a path across the dust. A thin ant line already marched toward the bowl, tidy as a thread drawn through cloth. Ants do not lie. We all watched the wooden bowl where the porridge sat warm and sweet. I brushed the dust gently until a narrow path showed. A thin line of black ants marched from the tree's root toward the rim, neat as stitches. They reached the porridge, tasted, and stilled. Legs folded, small bodies curved, the way dry leaves curl when fire kisses them. A soft hiss ran through the crowd, the sound people make when truth pricks the finger. Okonkwo the palm weaver nodded once. Agua is wola, he said. The poison is full. He motioned to me. I carried the bowl aside with care, even a wicked thing deserves caution. Anwa clicked its beak twice like a judge marking notes. Let the girl speak, another elder said. Truth grows lighter when it is carried by its owner. We set a calabash of water before Obianuju. Her eyes stayed on the ground. On her wrist, the coral thread madam had given her looked like a wound dressed with ribbon. The crowd pressed, like a tide. Child, Okonkwo said, voice low, tell us your mother's name, and the river that washed your feet. Tell us who taught your hands this route. A breeze moved the Irako leaves. The Ojin bell was still. Even the children did not whisper. It felt as if the whole tree leaned down to listen. It felt as if the earth itself wanted her answer. Silence can break like a pot. Obianuju gulped the water, then set the calabash down with a small thud. My mother is, she swallowed. Was Neka. Her voice shook. She drowned when Omambala rose fast after the long harmattan. Traders found me crying in the reeds. They said I would eat well in the south. I came in a canoe and then in a cart. I learned to smile before I learned to choose. She lifted her head, and for the first time I saw the child she had been beneath the mask of the girl she wore. In Madam's house, I ate clean food. I wore wrappers I had never touched before. But at night, I looked at the coral and thought, why should she have sun and I have shadow? I heard a woman at the market speak of a root that kills without trace. I asked no more, but my feet remembered the grove. She closed her eyes. I ground the root. I stirred it in. I watched the spoon. The bird shouted my name and would not stop. Her shoulders sagged. I took the coral because I thought the road was open. I lied at the well because I wanted to be smoke, not a girl caught by a hand. The wind carried her last words away like ash. The elders did not move for several breaths. Mercy and memory wrestled quietly in the shade. Judgment must hold 2 baskets, protection and mercy. Okonkwo stood, staff pressed to earth. We do not pour blood on ground if the ground can be healed, he said. The crime is ikpenobi, treachery from a trusted heart. But we will not carry death into this yard. Murmurs rose, some hot, some cool. He lifted his palm, and the murmurs folded like cloth. This is our sentence. He pointed toward the far path where forest thickens. Obianuju will be taken beyond Nakwa's boundary, past the old anthill where drums do not sound. For 7 market weeks she will not cross our gate. She will sleep where strangers sleep and eat what a stranger eats. Her name will be sung at evening fires as a warning. The coral returns to its owner. The chest is closed. The threshold will be washed with salt and prayer. He looked to Madame Kemdi. Do you accept this? She stood, strong and steady. I accept it, she said. Let the house be cleaned, and let my hearth burn clear. She turned to the girl. I fed you. You could have been a daughter. The words were simple. They weighed more than stone. Women brought water mixed with ash and salt. We cleansed the doorstep and wiped the mat where the bowl had fallen. Anwa bobbed its head as the ojin rang once. No victory, no laughter. Only the sound a door makes when it is shut to keep night outside and peace within. Evening softened the sun into copper. Work ended, voices thinned, and the heat uncurled its hand from the day. Madame Kembi walked to the gate carrying a bamboo cage. Inside, Anwa watched her with calm, coin-bright eyes. The parrot had called danger, the parrot had kept a life where a story might have ended. People gathered without speaking. We knew a moment worth keeping when it came. Nkemdi set the cage on the low wall and slid the latch with her thumb. A savior must not live behind bars, she said, voice low but clear. She opened the door. For a heartbeat the parrot did not move, as if honoring the gravity of the words. Then it stepped forward, stretched its wings, and lifted into the warm air. It rose above the breadfruit tree, circled once over the yard, and flashed toward the sunset like a shard of silver light. Children reached their hands after it and laughed without sound. Even the men who rarely reveal feeling wiped at their eyes as if dust had found them. Obianuju stood at the gate, raffia binding loose, 2 women on either side. She stared at the sky where the bird had vanished. The last light touched her face, carving it with the truth of what had been and could no longer be. The ojin gave a soft, single note. The world felt balanced again, even with a bruise where the balance had been lost. Dawn came clean. In the blue of first light, Madame Kembi lit 3 flames, one at the threshold, one in the kitchen, one before the ancestor shelf. Door, food, and memory, she said. Let them burn clear together. The house breathed easier. So did I. We walked with Obianuju to the far boundary where ironweed grows and the road forgets our name. She carried nothing of Madame's. Only the coral thread that had been a gift remained around her wrist. Nkemdi untied it gently and slipped it into her own palm. You will walk this way, the elder said, pointing, and you will not return before 7 market weeks. After that, if you come back, it must be with a truth we can hold. The girl looked at the earth, at us, at the place where the parrot had flown. She nodded once. I was fed, she said softly. I was also hungry. Then she turned and was swallowed by the quiet trees. That morning, I watched mothers at the wells teach their daughters new questions. What is your mother's name? Where is your river? Who will speak for you if you cannot speak? Nkemdi set her chest beneath a cloth and kept her gate bell bright. The story traveled from hearth to hearth, a lantern carried carefully at night. Wealth can dress a snake in silk, people said, but only loyalty wears the heart of a daughter. I have seen both dresses. I know which one lasts. The story you just heard is based on true events from our land, but names and places have been changed to protect everyone involved. We are not here to shame anyone. We tell it so that someone, somewhere, will pause and think about how many people open their homes with love, yet suffer when trust is broken. If you were in Madame Kembi's place, after the parrot's warning and the betrayal, what would you do? Would you stay quiet for peace, or speak up to save your home? Share your thoughts. Your words may guide another family in the dark. God sees every tear, and I believe courage brings brighter days. On the final screen, I'm leaving one of our most loved stories. Please watch them. They may surprise you. Thank you for staying with me till this moment.